On this chapter of Bruder on benefits, we're going to talk a little bit about control groups. What in the world is a control group, and why should you care? If you have multiple entities, whether they be corporations or partnerships or LLCs, and you're not providing the same or similar benefits to the eligible employees of each entity, you may be violating the provisions of ERISA. Because in a control group, each of the entity's eligible employees are considered to be employed by the same employer. Meaning, if you have a number of entities, the plan sponsor is going to be considered to have offered benefits to each of those entities, and those employees are going to have to be offered similar benefits. Sound complex? It can be. The important thing associated with a control group is figuring out first whether you've created a control group, and secondly, who the members of the control group are. How do you figure out a control group? Well, generally you're going to look at the ownership of the entities. If you have a parent, for example, that has a subsidiary entity, that subsidiary is going to be considered to be part of the control group. That's easy. However, there's also this complex determination of brother-sister entities. And brother-sister entities basically means that the owners of both entities have to have control of the entities. Typically, that means they own more than 80% of the stock or the ownership of the entities. And when you look at those entities, the commonality of ownership has to be in excess of 50% with respect to each entity. Each entity that satisfies those requirements is part of a control group. So, what happens if you fail to properly identify a control group? Well, if you're excluding employees of a particular entity, you may have to give benefits to those individuals, or you may have to give the monetary equivalent of those benefits to those individuals, which typically means you have interest and penalties associated with that as well. More importantly, however, you want to identify a control group, because if you failed to identify it properly initially, you're going to want to change that on a going forward basis. Bring those entities into compliance and make sure that you're offering the appropriate benefits to all of the employees of each of the eligible entities. This is an incredibly complex area of the law and really requires a review of the facts and circumstances associated with the arrangement by a competent ERISA attorney. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. Happy to discuss your details and your particular circumstances at length. This has been another chapter of Bruder on Benefits. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Hey, it's Charles Bruder. You've probably seen me on Bruder on Benefits. Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you're seeing, do me a favor. Click the thumbs up button down below. In addition, click the bell and be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you have some questions or some thoughts, some things you'd like me to cover, leave me a comment below. I'll read all the comments and I'll be happy to include you in a future episode. Thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate your support.